everybody. Welcome to Apolo-neering. And this week we have a pretty special guest here. We're going to be talking about the New Age. And so as you guys are aware, the whole purpose of this page is to give a platform for people to share their testimony and share what Jesus has done in their lives. And Satan has a lot of grip on people these days in different religions and cults and things like that. So I wanted to give people who have come out of those belief systems a place to share that and hopefully inspire you guys and encourage you in your walk with Christ and to know that we believe in the one true God, that he is real and he's tangible and he wants a relationship with us. So that being said, let me introduce our guest. This is Brie Marie, and she's fully devoted to Jesus Christ after being in the New Age movement for 7+ years. She's an author of the book Innocence to Ancients that tells the story of her journey before Christ and how much she wanted to understand God, but it led her down tunnels of the enemy. And at that time, she didn't know, but it left her not understanding life even more than she thought she did. Now she writes poetry completely dedicated to the Lord, and she is in the process of 2 books ranging on the topics of God's container for marriage and the twisted things that come out of our mouth about God that we are numb to and don't realize what we're saying. In all, Brie wants to share the truth of Jesus in all her ways, and being so intertwined in New Age, she wants to inform people on how the enemy is working in that world and how Jesus is here to give you all the answers you're searching for. So Brie, hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
I'm so excited to be here.
I know, you're the first one. Can you believe it?
I know, this is great. It's really amazing how I found you on Instagram and how social media links people. So this is good.
I know, I'm so excited. Yeah, social media does wonders in our day and age, and so I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of just tell our listeners and subscribers your story. Tell us how you were involved in the New Age for those 7 years, what you were involved with. I'm going to let you be as detailed as you want. It's up to your discretion what you want to share and what you don't want to share. So and then we'll just go from there. So.
All right. Wow. Okay. That sounds good. So it pretty much started at a really young age. I dabbled in it a little bit whenever I was younger, like around 7 or 8. I was really big into spells and the supernatural and understanding like what's going on in life. And I got a computer, and one of the first things that came to my head was looking up like witch spells, like how to do a love spell or how to get someone else to come on your path or things like that. And I was like, wow, there's a lot of these on the internet. And but I always felt like really weird whenever I would go on those sites. I felt like I was doing something wrong. And then maybe like a couple years later, I started learning about like the law of attraction and the power of now and The Secret. And that was like the beginning part where it was just at the surface level of trying to understand like the positive ways of living and your mindset. And I dove into affirmations and so this is actually really interesting how it all started. Is I was in a relationship with this guy for about a year and a half. And by the end of this relationship, it was like one of the most toxic relationships ever. And it was my first relationship. And by the end of this relationship, I wanted to commit suicide. And I didn't want to live. I basically planned out how I wanted to kill myself and everything. And the day that it was about to happen, I'm crying, like bawling on the floor. I had no really huge belief in Jesus, God, or anything. I was more agnostic. Like I believed something was out there, but I wasn't sure what it was. And so I'm on the floor crying my eyes out, surrendering to this higher power, basically saying like, if you don't take me, I'm taking myself. Like I need you to take me. And I wasn't saying like, take me in his presence or anything. I really just wanted to not be alive. But obviously I feel like something else was speaking through me in a way that I didn't understand. And So yeah, and at that point, I'm having these thoughts go back and forth of do it, no, don't do it, do it. And I'm staring at myself in the mirror, and I have tears and scratches going down my face because I was trying to figure out how to do it in a way without like tools, but just my body, which was weird. But so I'm sitting in front of the mirror, looking at myself in the eyes, and all of a sudden, when I'm hearing these thoughts, I begin to get this like, I came off of autopilot inside my thoughts, and I realized that I was kind of in power of these thoughts and I could choose. And I had this huge flicker in my eyes as I'm looking in the mirror. It was like a deep sadness was rolling down my cheeks, and in a blip of a like just a second, it was complete joy rolling down my cheeks of happiness, of realizing that I had a choice to choose between which thoughts were real and which ones weren't. And then I felt this huge blanket of love just wrap me in its arms and tell me everything was going to be okay. And from where I am now, I know that that was God. Where I was then, I was trying to figure out, like, what was this presence? Like, what was this supernatural being? And I went online and I was just like, what are thoughts?
Yeah.
Which came to the next thing, where I entered the University of Metaphysics, because it was talking to me about psychics and supernatural beings, and you can listen to thoughts from the astral world. And I was like, whoa, that's what I was feeling at that moment. And that's the thing that saved me. And so
So at that point, you had thought that like someone was sending you, thoughts through the astral world and a realm, and you were picking up on those thoughts. And so,
yeah, basically. And I basically just dove down the astral realm. They're teaching about psychic abilities and astral projection and affirmations, and that you're the God within. You don't need to look without yourself. Like, you are that. And I was like, you're right, I am. So I'm thinking that I am God myself. Like, I don't have to look towards anything. Like, I'm basically the one who saved myself from suicide, is what I thought. It's like, oh, the thoughts were coming in, but I had the choice to choose. So it was me that saved myself. And yeah, and then I ended up getting out of that school maybe like 2 years later, but it affected me deeply because that's how I lived my life for the next like 5-6 years.
Right.
I went places, and if anything bad happened to me, I thought that it was like karma, or what have you been thinking to bring that into your existence? And it was just this really mind-twisted way of thinking that if anything bad happened in my life, it was because I was either reflecting that out, or it was because I was that at one point in my life, and I needed that to come into my life as well to show me how I was being at another certain point.
Okay.
And that, I don't know if that makes sense, but it was just this really trippy way of thinking inside my head.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it got to the point where I was doing affirmations every day. I would say this 12-minute affirmation list of what I wanted to happen in my life, in the morning when I woke up, and at night when I go to sleep. And they would say things about like, I want the astral beings to come into my life and like talk to me and connect with me and let me have out-of-body experiences where I can like go to their planet and talk to all these other beings, and just connect on a different wavelength, as I would have said back then. And it got to the point where this guy ended up reaching out to me from California, and he was telling me that I wasn't from this planet. I was from planet Antara, and I was like a dragon from this planet, which is really crazy. But at that time, I was like, maybe this is true. Like,
wow.
all the affirmations that I've been doing, maybe this is the next step that I need to go down. Maybe I need to listen to what this guy is saying. And everything that he was saying, I was so curious to understand that I didn't want to just be like, no, like you're crazy. I really wanted to seek deeper into this. Right. And I ended up quitting my job a week after talking to him. And and he told me to fly out to California, and he would download me with all the mysteries of the universe. But he said that he would download me with all the mysteries of the universe, how he would sync my brain with the past lives that I had been forgetting. And I was like, all right, like, let's go. And so I flew out on this plane to California, I was in Massachusetts at the time. So it's all the way across the country. I'm 18 at the time. And then
so how long had you been involved in the New Age, or what
at the time?
Mm-hmm.
I would probably say deeply about a year and a half.
Okay.
Yeah. And then this was 2012, 2013.
Okay.
So from here is whenever it started getting really, really intense for me, because I lived in this spiritual community where there was about 8 of us, and they all just basically did what they wanted. There would be like shroom ceremonies every new moon, full moon. They would smoke marijuana every day, DMT, just every type of drugs that you had, and they wanted to unlock the mysteries of the universe. And they would always say to me, like, you need more medicine, to understand. And
so,
medicine.
So this spiritual community, was this just people involved in the New Age, or were there like witches here? Were there Satanists? Because a lot of them do that too on these, the new moons, and they have specific dates set apart for the solstices and stuff like that. So who else was involved in this community?
Yeah, so none of them were Satanists. It was more of just like a lot of them just thought that they were animals from different existences. Okay. Yeah. So like one of the ladies, she was from Canada, and she came down and lived with us, and she told me that she was a cheetah from Egypt, and that she was the princess's cheetah. And this is actually stuff that I talk about in my book, because she told me that I was like the princess and she was my cheetah. And it was some weird stuff that she would tell me. And she was like, yeah, and you would talk to the slaves, and you would tell them to do stuff for you. And it was like this story that she had all written out, and she would tell it to me, and I understood it, and I tried to make sense of it in my life. And I was like, that must be true. Like, I'm going to go with that because she remembers it, so it must be. It was weird.
Yeah, it sounds so strange being on the outside, never experiencing something like that before. But exactly. It's good because I'd never even heard of this before. I didn't even know there were communities like that, or people who got together and lived life in that manner.
Oh yeah, big time. Like there was this one guy who thought he was a dolphin, another one who thought that he was a dragon. There were 3 of them who told me that they were dragons from this planet Antara, and they had been coming back on the earth for 40,000 years, and they keep coming back because they're trying to wake up the planet, and they can't wake up the planet until all 8 of the dragons come together. Wow. And, yeah, it's really crazy to like look back and realize like how wild it sounds, but I believed it at the time, and I thought that it was so cool to think that I was one of the 8.
Yeah. And, wow.
Yeah, and then so the spiritual community that I was a part of, like, I'm not sure if you know what like polyamory is, or like blood circles or things like that. So polyamory is this thing where it's more going on the West Coast right now and traveling through. I feel like it's going to be like the new thing, the new agenda at one point. But polyamory is where you can basically be committed to multiple people at the same time and love both of them and be in a relationship with them. But they all know what you're doing. So you're in constant communication of transparency with each other of, yeah, I like this person and I like this person, but I'm going to continue being with both of you. So that was something that was really interesting. And a lot of them did that. And I ended up diving into that as well. Because I was just like, wow, like I didn't know that there was a new way of relationships. Like I didn't even know that there was a way of not being committed and being with someone else and not seeing it as cheating. It's just about being transparent. And so in my eyes, I saw that as a new age thing as well. Like there's like a bunch of topics that go under new age that people don't even understand. But then the blood circles was kind of like the full moon, new moon circles, where all the women would be on their menstrual cycle and they would all just like meditate and, as they would say, is pray, but it wasn't praying. It was just meditating to the universe about the blood that was circulating through their bodies and releasing it on the ground. And some things that they would say was, the more blood we release to the earth, the more men won't have to die. And that was also very interesting stuff that I went through. And they said that women shouldn't have to do anything on their menstrual cycles. Like everybody else should be serving them. It was like the women were in power in the New Age movement. It was like we were goddesses and the men really had no power over us, which is very, very different when it comes to biblical stuff. Is like, it's not that the woman is less than the man. It's just that the man is our protector and we're submitting to them, and it's good to submit to them because they're taking care of us in a way. And which is very different in New Age. Is everybody wants to be on the same level and telling each other, I don't know, it's just very interesting. But and then after all this, I took to Instagram and I was sharing with people all the stuff that I had seen and witnessed, and so many people understood what I was talking about because they had been through it too. So I was like, wow, I'm not alone in this. Like I actually thought that I was going crazy thinking that I was the only one who believed this stuff. And I gained a following of like 20,000 people on Instagram, but I was talking to them about nonsense, just past life, all the stuff that we're talking about now. Like I was deeply in astrology and tarot, and I was having people pay like astronomical amounts of money for these readings where I was predicting their future when really I wasn't, I'm just talking about these cards that are popping up, and it's all the enemy, which was
Can you explain that just a little bit? Go into that a little bit of detail on how you would predict someone's future and why people thought you were correct. Was it, just go into a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'll talk about tarot real quick. So with tarot, you can do like, there's so many different spreads that you can do, but there was this 3-card spread that I would do where it was like past life, a future, present. And it would basically say what was happening in your past life, and there will be negative cards in the deck and positive cards in the deck. And if it was a negative card, the negative card would basically state like, this is what's happening in your life. And I would share this with them, and I would say like, okay, so you're coming from this place of all this negativity, and this is exactly what happened. Like maybe you had a death in the family, maybe, I don't know, just really dark stuff like that. And then to the future of, okay, well, this is what's happening too. And it could be reversed as well, where you're coming from a really good spot to a really bad spot, which would then put into their head of, oh crap, like something's going to happen that's not going to be good, which it's just really frightening that we believe this stuff from just like me, you know, or you, any person that they begin to trust and see that they're sharing this stuff online. And so, yeah, I had a bunch of people pay for those, and I think I would charge like anywhere from $45 to $70 for those readings. And it was so false. But at the time, I really thought that I was reading people. And, I was also a Reiki master. So I would go over people, healing their bodies, taking out all the negative energy inside their body, thought that I was doing that, when I wasn't doing that either. It was probably just putting more negative stuff in their body, like summoning the enemy in a sense to into their body, like opening up these gateways for them. And they always say inside of Reiki, you are not healing anyone. They're healing themselves by opening themselves up to the energy. So I would be like, okay, well, it's not me. It's a higher power healing them. So I sort of thought that it was God or source energy at that time. And I was like, wow, like they're healing themselves by doing it themselves, by the God energy within them, by opening themselves up, because they're God as well. If I'm God, like we're all gods and just experiencing our own form of God. And yeah, so did the whole energy healing, got really deep into astrology as well, like almost started working for someone who was really big in the astrological world, learning how to read the charts. Anyone that I met up with, it was like I knew what their sign was immediately. I knew what they were. I would be like, let me read your chart. I want to know like where your Saturn is and where your Jupiter is. And I just wanted to know all that stuff. And that was actually something that held me back from coming to Christ, because I was so deep into astrology that it was wrong in the Bible. And I was confused because I was like, no, like astrology is so right. Like everything that I predict, it's all making sense. This is why I am the way that I am, because these planets line up here, and I am this way because of this. And I remember I was reading the Bible one day, and I was trying to find all the astrological references in the Bible, and it was all making sense to me. I was like, oh, God wants me to create a Bible of astrological references. That's why I'm being led to God right now, because I need people to see that it's all based on astrology. So that's kind of where it started with me diving into the Bible again. And then one of my friends sat me down in a Bible study and was like, no, you're reading it very twisted. Like, I think the enemy is still blinding you to a lot of the scriptures inside of the Bible. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it literally is talking about constellations here and different stars. And he was like, yeah, Brie, that's not astrology, that's astronomy. And I was like, oh, I guess you're right. Like, astronomy is in the Bible about the stars and all that stuff, but that's not astrology. And he was saying, I think I'm not exactly sure what verse it is, but I know it's Isaiah. It's in Isaiah. And it says, look to the mediums and the psychics and the moon. And in my head, I saw that as like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to look to the mediums and the psychics and the moon for all the answers. But he was being sarcastic. He was saying, like, don't look to them or I'm going to, like, spit you out. Like, whoa, okay. I didn't see it like that before. Yeah, so it was really life-changing to realize that it wasn't astrology, and I needed to really understand the Bible.
Right. So you gained this following on Instagram. How far into your New Age experience was this, and what was the turning point towards Jesus? When did you start realizing that you needed Him? That this New Age was just it wasn't filling the void in our heart like Jesus can.
Yeah. So it was 2014 when I made the Instagram account. I deleted the Instagram account in 2017. So maybe just like 2 years ago,
Yeah.
a year and a half ago. But it was about maybe 2 years into me making the Instagram account where I just started having these weird thoughts. Nothing about Jesus or God, because I still believed in the universe at the time. But it was these thoughts of, okay, but what's next? Like, we're all just talking about the same thing over and over again. Like, there's nothing new. You can literally believe in anything and everyone will believe it. Like, I'm confused as to, I feel like I could say anything and people would be like, wow, you're right. And I want to get to the point where people aren't saying that. Like, people are challenging my beliefs, and right now I'm not being challenged by anything. And I was so confused why everybody was saying that I was right, and everybody liked what I was saying. And because I've always been that person I don't like going the same route as everybody else. And then I saw that everybody was on this bandwagon of New Age where I was like, this doesn't feel right anymore. This isn't right. Like, there's something else. And I actually made a video saying all this, and I almost posted it, but I got like really nervous because I was like, wow, they're all going to judge me. Like, I'm being very critical on the New Age right now, but I think that there's something else out there. But I didn't know what it was. Like, I did not want to look into Jesus whatsoever. Like, Jesus was the bottom for me. Like, it was the last thing that I would ever go to. Mm-hmm. And obviously now it's the first. Like, I can't even, it's amazing that he's just forgiven me for all the stuff that I've said and done, and it's beautiful. But yeah, I don't know. It's like, how do I explain this? Sorry, I'm getting a little.
No, it's okay. Oh, what drew you to Jesus? When was that time when you, like, it became clear? Because you're saying right now that, like, I was really starting to question, if there was something out there. When was it clear to you that there was something out there, and then you started to search for it and found that it was Jesus? When was that time?
So, there was one big moment, but I don't think it was because of that big moment. I think it was all the little seeds that were planted along the way. And people planted seeds that I'll never be able to go back and say, like, wow, thank you so much. Like, there was this one time on a bus when I was driving from Massachusetts to New York, and I'm sitting reading about Eckhart Tolle and Deepak Chopra, and he's over here reading the Bible, and he looks at me and he's just like, that doesn't have truth in it. Like, this has truth in it. And he's just like trying to help me understand. And I was shunning it. And I was like, if you think that's truth and I think this is truth, we're both right. Like, just chill. Like, I don't want to listen to your Bible stuff. I'm going to listen to this stuff, which is also like my Bible. Right. So your Bible and my Bible are the same thing. And he was really trying to help me, but I didn't understand it. And there was just so many incidences like that, where it was just little tiny seeds that I remember. And then this one day I was talking to this guy for like 4 hours on a FaceTime call. And first day that I had ever met him too, I was actually on the phone with one of my friends, and I'm talking about astrology. And then the other guy takes the phone from him, and we're talking for the next 4 hours about, like, I'm telling him how astrology's right, and he's talking to me about Jesus, and we're kind of like in this debate. And then it got to the point where I just felt these swords like hitting my being, like piercing me and letting the truth in. And it was like every seed that had been planted up until that moment, it just started to bloom by a lot of what he was saying. And I was like, whoa, like this all makes sense. Like I actually want to learn more about Jesus. Like I want to understand him. This is the first time where someone has shared with me about Jesus and I haven't been like, don't talk about that. Like I don't want to talk about him. Like you're wrong. And I actually sat there and listened to him talk for like hours and was just asking questions. And I was actually wanting to know the answer. And before I didn't want to know the answer. I would just be like, get away from me. So after that is whenever I dove into it, there was still twisted stuff in my mind because I didn't know, I was still confused.
Right.
But yeah, it all started that day and it was amazing. It was great.
Yeah. So do you remember the day that you gave your life to Jesus?
Yeah, so it was August 7th, 2016, which is crazy because I gave it to him in 2016, got saved, but was still in my new age ways.
Right.
And actually that's something that like I want to bring up is that Jesus is still there, like through people who are in the new age.
Right.
Like it's just they're still in these twisted beliefs and people who give to Jesus. Like I have so many friends who have given their life to Jesus, but they're still in the new age. And I have to realize like I was there too. And I still had a twisted mentality and we'll pull them out of that by just continuing to let seeds go into them.
That's right. So I guess this kind of introduces this next topic of, New Age theology versus what the Bible teaches, right? Because you're saying, that you had all of this stuff learned, right? And you basically had to like unlearn it and relearn what truth was, right? So can you explain that process? Like, was it really hard for you to let some of that stuff go that you were practicing, or and how easy was it to turn away from some friends of yours, or like how are those relationships going still?
Yeah, for sure. That's a big question because my transfer to Jesus and getting saved was actually a really hard process for me because I was so deep in New Age that anything I wanted, I could have. Like I was, like I'll think about it and it'll come to you. That's basically what happened for me. And when I came to Jesus, things weren't happening as quickly. Like things were really slow. He was telling me to be patient, and I was like, dude, like I don't want to be patient. Like I would pray, and I'd be like, it was so much easier for me to get what I wanted before. Like I'm so confused as to why it feels like you're the one that I want to be with, but it was so easier to get stuff before.
Right.
And he's letting me know, like, yeah, like the enemy is going to give you what you want. He's going to give you everything that you want, but I'm going to give you what you don't even know that you want. And I was like, okay, that makes sense, but I still don't know how. And I would call my friend crying my eyes out because I felt like I just had this huge backpack on that I didn't want to let go of. I felt like I had just everything crammed in this backpack and I'm trying to bring it into Christianity and living with Jesus, and Jesus is like, no, you got to set that all down. Like, yeah, bring that here. And it was really like one of the first times that I really cried and released my emotions without feeling bad for it. Because in the new age, it's kind of like what I thought and my belief was that if you cry about a certain something and you begin to get negative emotions about it, you're going to keep getting that inside your life.
Right.
And with Jesus, he was like, no, let it out. Like, let it out. Come to me, pour it at my feet, and I will take it from you.
Right.
I was like, okay, this is so different than what I was learning before, because I would just keep everything in until one day it would all just lash out. And Jesus lets me give it to him every day of just all the stuff that's going through my head, and he never shuns me for it. You know, he just lets me release it. And that's definitely a very twisted thing that goes through New Age, but I had to learn how to understand that, how to get in touch with my emotions again, and get in touch with just who I was, but who he is as well. And understanding that he is not the enemy. Like it's not even that the enemy is opposite of God, because he's not. He's way lower. Like, I don't even know how to explain that.
Yeah.
God is God, and there's no opposite or anything. He's just him.
Yeah.
And the way that the enemy twists things it's so deceiving, how there's so much that I read through the Bible where I'm just like, wow, I can't believe I was looking at this in this way. You know, I was reading a verse the other day that said something like, you carve these idols, and why do you carve them out? And why do you talk to these rocks when there's no breath in them? Mm-hmm. And I was looking at that in a New Age perspective of, wow, like I used to talk to these crystals and like these statues of things that literally had no breath in them, but I can't talk to but yeah, it's definitely been a challenge, I would say, but it's so much more beautiful. Mm-hmm. Like, although it can be hard, like for me, it's been hard walking with Jesus because there's so many distractions.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in this life, and it's only going to get more distracting, I feel like, as the time goes on. But there's so much to do that has nothing to do with Jesus. And it's really scary. And there's times where I have to realize, like, whoa, do you want to go down that tunnel, or is Jesus calling you this way? Right. And I really have to go the opposite way, even though my desire sometimes is to go this way. But then I pray, and I'm just like, all right, that's not what you want to do, because it's just going to lead to a different tunnel that you don't want to go down.
Yeah. No, that's why it's so important to walk by the Spirit, you know, instead of gratifying our fleshly desires and, succumbing to those desires. Sometimes it's super hard to be obedient to the Lord. So in your videos, you talk about the law of attraction and how prevalent, how prevalent is that in our society? Is that like a really dangerous belief? And do you see Christian pastors taking that too far in churches today? Can you maybe talk about the law of attraction a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. So I've actually tried to like get out all of those thoughts. So it's even kind of hard to put myself back into the law of attraction mindset. But law of attraction is definitely hindering a lot of people's belief system, for sure. It's basically whatever you think about, you bring about. Mm-hmm. If you're thinking positive, you get positive. If you're thinking negative, you get negative. I don't know, like whatever you're thinking about inside, it begins to reflect and project outside. Yep. So for me, there would be times where I thought that I could change my whole world. Like I thought that if I just thought about positive things, negative things on the news really weren't happening. Like it wasn't actually happening in my world. I thought that my world was the only world that really mattered, and I could create a whole new world with the positivity that was going through my head. And if I just project that out, nothing bad is ever occurring. and it's weird. It's so trippy actually about that. But yeah, a lot of people are doing that. A lot of people are saying like, oops, you there?
I'm here. I can hear you.
Okay. A lot of people saying like vibes, good vibes, and not to be around the bad vibes. Okay. You can't hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. So a lot of people are saying not to be around bad vibes people. Just good vibes people are the ones who are thinking positive thoughts and not letting negativity into their world. And I just remember seeing a lot of this stuff go through social media of keep your bad vibes to yourself. And it was affecting me deeply, where I was thinking like, there's some really crappy people in the world. Like we all have crappy parts of ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
But these people need your love as well. Like you're gonna, like someone needs to go into this person's world and let them know like what they can do to be better. And although they do keep like spitting activity, like what if you're the one person who can change that for them?
Right.
And that's when it all started to hit me, where I was like, wow, this bad vibes, good vibes, law of attraction stuff is really silly. And yeah, it's not correct.
Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of people are going by it now. And I look at a lot of my news feed because I still have a lot of new age people. I didn't delete anyone. It was also very hard for me to talk about Jesus at first because everybody was telling me I was wrong. Like, how are you going to say that your religion's right and all of us are wrong? But I still have a lot of those people, and I go through and look at what they're saying. And before I would have seen it as like, wow, that's so deep, and how did they even come up with that? And that makes so much sense. And I look at it now and I'm just like, wow, that's so twisted. And if only they saw the real works of God compared to what we're working with. But I can't be mad at them or upset about what they're sharing because they're under a huge spell. They're under a huge spell and they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And I just pray for them, you know? Yeah. Like, I know that if Jesus can save me, he literally can save anyone. So,
amen. Yeah, so would you equate the law of attraction to what's called the name it and claim it teaching, I guess?
What is that exactly? I haven't heard about that.
So it's in my opinion, it's the same exact thing, that you name something, you visibly, think of it in your mind and you picture it like to where it's crystal clear and you claim it. You claim that in your life. So let's say that I want like $1,000. Like I picture that money in my bank account. I picture the stack of the $1,000 and I claim that I have $1,000. And by doing so, I attract that, that sum of money towards me. And so, the reason I asked that question is because I want to show part of this channel is exposing the works of darkness, and Satan disguises himself as an angel of light and brings these practices into our churches. And so I brought that up because I wanted you to explain it, but also ask you if that's really what's being taught, because there's a lot of pastors out there on TBN and other things that are saying, all you need to do is claim that, that healing in Jesus, and we do have that power, but they're taking it to the point where it's that law of attraction mentality, that new age, actually Hinduism teaching of law of attraction.
Oh yeah, for sure. Everything that you just said is spot on. With the visualization and claim it and it's yours, that's all law of attraction based new age stuff that is also coming in the church. Like you said, there's yoga coming in the church where yoga is practice. I was deep in yoga. I loved yoga, not necessarily for the poses or anything. I just loved being flexible and being able to move my body in those ways. But once I started researching it, I was like, whoa, I don't want to do something that is summoning gods
Yeah.
that isn't my God for one, and are really false gods. And so it took me a little bit to get out of yoga, but then once I started seeing that it was coming into the churches, I was like, do you not know, like, the word yoga is Hindu in itself? Like, what do you and now they're calling it holy yoga or Christian yoga.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that doesn't change the fact that it's Hinduism and has nothing to do with Jesus. Or like they're praying through the yoga stuff and saying, like, just look up to the heavens. And like they'll do these poses and they'll say, like, look up to the heavens.
Right.
But I'm confused as to which heaven they're actually talking to if they're not talking to God, Jesus Christ. And I've had a few people ask me about that, and how they don't see it as a problem, like they're just stretching. But I don't agree, so I don't indulge in it. But I also haven't known how to express it in that way without them thinking that I'm like coming at them, because I'm really just sharing like, hey, that's not right. But yeah, there's a lot of churches right now that are bringing in holy yoga, Christian yoga. There's tarot cards in the church right now. I don't know if you saw that.
I did see that.
That was something where I was like, oh my gosh, what? Like yesterday I saw something about an angel Ouija board. Like you can talk to your guardian angels. And I was like, no. Don't do that.
It's so important that we're aware of these things, and that's why I love having people like you to describe these things, because it's coming in the church every single day. There's new occult practices entering the church, and it's all to weaken the body of Christ. It's all to draw us away from Jesus, and we need to be aware of these things. In fact, at my youth group, I'm going through a teaching series right now on world religions, cults, and the occult, and we're going through Hinduism right now. And so we discussed yoga this past week at our youth group. And for the research that I was doing, everything that I could find, any Hindu that you'll talk to, any person that practices Hinduism will tell you that yoga is not an exercise; it's a spiritual practice, right? Because you're trying to break that cycle of reincarnation and karma by releasing the Kundalini spirit up your spine and opening your third eye so that you can reach enlightenment. And whether you call it Christian yoga or holy yoga or whatever you want to call it, you're still practicing something that was meant to be an occult practice, that was meant to glorify Satan, ultimately. So I wish people would do more research into these things rather than just submitting to it and making it a practice of their everyday life, and then having to pray that God would protect them from the spirits that they've left it, that they've opened the door to as time goes on, and they realize that it's not good. So are there any other practices that you see entering the church right now other than tarot and
So there was something that I saw the other day where they're teaching people how to be prophets. I don't know if you saw that, but it was like people would just come up to the stage and look at someone and be like, this is what I'm prophesying about you, and this is what I'm doing. And I was seeing that, and I was like, no, that's not prophesying. That's putting your false thoughts on someone else, and now they're believing you. And that's really what predicting the future is, like in New Age. And I was actually really worried about this, because this was a church that I used to like, but I also didn't know the real Christ at this time. I didn't know the real God. I was still just in the beginning of my phase with the church, and I didn't really know that there was false stuff happening in the church until maybe like 6 months to a year into being saved, and the Holy Spirit was just convicting me like, no, like you need to get out of this church, you need to leave this one. And all the churches are just kind of speaking about like this is going to be your year. Like you said about the claim it, name it, or God is going to do something great in your life this year. And I'm like, but what if, like, it's not that he doesn't want to, but what if something doesn't great happen in your life this year, you know? And people want this positive, preachy, Jesus Christ prosperity, and they want to bring more people into the church and get a bigger following, it seems like, so people are on board with Jesus Christ, but they're sharing a false Jesus. And it's not okay, and that's happening a lot of places. And I actually wasn't in the church for about 5 months because I was trying to find a church. I was praying. I was like, these churches aren't right now. Like, none of these are good. Like, I need you to help me find the right church. And last week was the first time I went to a church that felt so in line with what I was reading. Like, I was watching this documentary online with my boyfriend, or not documentary, but it was a sermon, and it was about evolution and how the earth is like 4,000, 5,000 years old. It's not billions of years old, like all these scientists are saying. And I was like, wow, so good. Like, this is the type of stuff I want to be learning about. I want to learn like how they're putting their agenda on the kids and the whole world. And I went to this church, and the exact stuff that I was learning on this documentary was in the church.
Wow.
And I was like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. Like, it felt so good to like even give my money to them. Like, it felt so good to there were some times where I was like, oh, I don't want to tithe this church, but in a sense, like, I want to, but I don't. And I don't know, like, it just felt so right last week being in that church. And I loved it because it was straight truth. It was reading from the Bible. It wasn't their own thoughts about the verse. We read like 4 pages of the Bible, like, and you don't do that a lot in some of these other churches. And I was just like, oh, this is so good. We need to be in the Bible, like the real truth.
I agree. Okay, I have a couple more questions for you, and then I think we'll wrap it up. So the first one is, do you think it's important to study and know the history of other religions?
That's actually something that I was looking into. I think it is important, for sure. I think it's important to understand where someone else is in their religion so you can talk to them about how it's twisted, it's not correct. And I was doing a lot of research into some different religions as well, but then I stopped because I didn't feel like I was at a huge strength. I don't know how to put that, but I didn't feel like I was super firm yet with Jesus, that I was still diving into twisted stuff where I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense. I was like, no, wait, it doesn't, you know? And so I had to pray. And now I'm at that point where I'm so firm that I do feel like it's good to research that stuff, but you've got to have this, like, a firm, stable place with God before digging into that stuff.
Right. Good. Cool. I was hoping you would say something like that. Okay, my last question for you, and then we could wrap this up, is can you give us some tips for witnessing to people that are involved in the New Age? Like, how do we approach someone that is, heavily involved in the New Age? How do you go up to someone who's reading your tarot and tell them about Jesus or whatever, So can you give us some tips about that?
Yeah, this is definitely still something that I'm working on and trying to understand how I can kind of tiptoe, but not tiptoe and jump full in, because I do have a lot of friends still in there, and I am still trying to work my way in. But for me, it's just about sharing my testimony, like sharing what happened, like, in my whole story. And they even saw, like, I was so deep in New Age, and now they're seeing that I came to Jesus Christ, and they're like, how? Like, who is Jesus Christ that makes you think that this is right compared to what you were believing? So something's there. I've had people say, like, wow, I used to follow you on your old Instagram page. And when you came to Jesus Christ, I was like kind of weirded out, but I felt like you were such a strong believer that you wouldn't go to something that was wrong. So I started looking into him, and now I feel like this is right. And I was like, wow, that's so great. I'm really happy about that, you know? But yeah, I guess tips is just asking questions like, okay, so where did you get this research, and why do you think it's correct, and what makes you believe it? And there was this question that this guy gave me a couple months back, and it says, do you believe that what you believe is really real? And that question was so good and profound, because there's so many things that people believe that just aren't true. And when you ask them that question, it kind of like shakes them up, and it makes you wonder like, okay, is this true? Mm-hmm. But yeah, I would say just sharing your testimony, sharing like, hey, like I've been where you're at. You know, I used to dive into that stuff all the time, but here's what I found. Like, this is what I found, and this is the research that I've done, and I'd love you to look at this as well. This is also like a really touchy topic for me, because this is something that I'm really trying to figure out how to navigate in. Because with New Age and Jesus, it's a complete different spectrum, where Jesus talks about the truth and Satan completely twists the truth, where you say anything about Jesus to the New Age community and they're like, that's wrong. So I'm trying to find my way into that right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. Sorry, I have one more question. How are you kind of exposing New Age today? Like, and then can you give us like where we can follow you at, and give us some more information on how we can stay in touch with you?
For sure. So yeah, I write a lot of poetry, and I talk about verses. Like, I really meditate on one verse, and I'm just like, okay, what is this verse really saying? And how can I put this in a poetry form to get them to understand this as well? And I just tell Jesus to write through me. I'm like, let me be a tool, an instrument, come through me and just write for me. And I feel like all my poetry is really exposing the darkness, talking about the twisted stuff that is going on in the world right now, and how Jesus is the Savior. But then also I share a lot on my Instagram story about not the opposites, but the differences of what Satan is saying and what Jesus is saying, and how it's completely twisted. And then I talk about it on my Facebook as well. And yeah, but you can find me on Instagram at Brie Marie Adkins, and then my YouTube channel is Brie Marie 126, and then yeah, those are pretty much the two big ones that I would say where you can find.
And then for all you guys listening, I'll put links in the video description that you can go follow Brie at, and she has some good videos, so make sure you guys check her out. But Brie, I'm gonna say we're gonna go, just because I wanted to keep it, to an hour. So yeah, it was nice having you on. Thanks for coming.
Yes, it was so great. Thank you so much. I'm really excited about what you're doing.
Thank you.